networking, we already talked about that. Day 6, this is Monday, February 3rd. Talking about Linux, talk a little bit about the course materials, machines, and some command line. So let's take first thing, user access. You should be able to, all the students should have a class 2020 user. The actual user account might look like this. And from the GUI, anybody should be able to log in using this password. Everybody should have some kind of standard, if that's what you want to call it, a standard account, not an administrator. And so then we practiced accessing that by Linux. Should be able to do either command line and so forth. Now, you should be able to, and I'm going to draw that out here too, you should be able to log into the work server. Once you're in the work server, you can type SSH and then what the user is at the IP address of the machine. And you should be able to log in. Does that make sense? We'll talk a little more about that as we move along. We took a look at logging in general. So this would be our computers, our inside, if you want to call it that, our inside or our internal network where we don't want people to have access to. We have servers here, and we're 216s connected, here's 229, and so forth. But, and the security here, right, we have a firewall. Now, the security level over here on the DMZ is not as strict, so we should be able to move from here into here and access our machines. Does that make sense? Now the firewall, this area out here is the least secure. It's the least secured. So when people try to come externally into our network, they'll be blocked. So if somebody comes from here, they'll be blocked unless they're going to work server 2. Then there's a path through to work server 2. Once you're in work server 2, you should be able to SSH to wherever your machine is. Actually, the other machine's in there too. And I'll review that command here in a little bit again. So, next thing, let's take a look at a little review, memory map. You got a program on the computer, you bring the program in, it becomes a process when it's in memory. Here's the text program, data associated with that, and then the heap, our basic data here for processing, and then we have our stack that keeps the context of the program, where we are, and so forth. So we reviewed that a little bit, and we said, you know, the kernel manages all that. So we're either in kernel mode or user mode, we're switching between those two. We create a new process, then it's ready, and then somewhere the kernel has to allow the user for that mode to actually, for that process to function. So we get this communication back and forth. If the process needs to be stopped, we can block it, the kernel can block it, put it back into the ready, then when there's an opportunity it can function again in user mode. On Wednesday we'll talk a little bit more. You can actually have multiple stacks and heaps in here and allow what they would call multi-threading through this process. So we'll talk a little bit about threads again on Wednesday, and then we'll talk a little bit about how computers sync, synchronization, actually that should be an NC like that, how they synchronize or schedule these processes. A couple more things. Some of the commands we executed: process command, the history, we did an echo, did environment, change directory. We looked at some files, looked at the hidden file. It's hidden because of that dot. We looked at the shadow file, which has the passwords. We looked at the password file. It has lots of information, but not the passwords. We looked at aliases. You can develop aliases and store them in the Wbr-S20 file. We looked at the path variable. In order to see that, we had to do an echo with a $ in front of the variable name. And we did a simple redirect. So over here are the commands that I grabbed them out of my history that we actually did. We did a clear the screen. We looked at the history. We did a number of change directories. I logged in as another user on the machine. We took a look at the path variable. We typed env, which showed us all the environmental, changed to the root directory, the very top directory in our hierarchy. The home environmental variable has the path to our home directory, so you could type, even though there's simpler ways to do it than that way, but you could type that. Change directory to the ECT coming off the root directory. That would take you to the home. That's a tilde, long listing. This is also a long listing. This one here is an alias. Change to a hidden directory. We'll look at that again on Wednesday. There's a listing of our directory. We took a look at the Wbr-S20. That is where we had some aliases stored. I showed some examples. We did less, allowed us to look at these two files. You notice the path to the files. Had to do a sudo because we needed to get authorization. Here we exited the computer. We did some jobs. I did a tree. I'm not sure I even have that listed here anywhere else, but I did a tree command. And it lists all the directories. I was at the root directory, and then I stopped it, and we could see the jobs, and we looked at the processes. This was just exiting the computer. Here's looking at the processes again. I'm going to switch back. Change directory. Here we did the tree. Here we restarted the job. We looked at the jobs, and here we killed the job. Then we looked at the jobs again and saw it wasn't there. I did a last to see who's been on the system. This one, by the way, is that work server 2 that you can log into remotely. This is a long listing and showing all the files, hidden files. We looked at this. Down here we did a copy of that file before we would go in and change it. These were some aliases I demonstrated. Actually, these here. And you could see them in the Wbr-S20 file. I copied the history. That's called a redirect. You can redirect, take a command and redirect information into like a file if you want to save it. and then we took a look at it. So, got a good start on some CLL, and mark that all up, and here they are again. Not quite all of them, but most of them that we used today. So, what are we doing? We will be continuing to work in the curriculum, the exams, and the labs. And now, as we do commands in class, you want to start accumulating them. You want to organize some notes in your journal. However you're doing that, in order to manage the new commands we're learning in class outside of the commands you're also learning in the labs through the curriculum. That is it.